Hi, Mike DePung here, and thanks for joining me again. I've got another story for you today, and sometimes I wish that I could tell these with a group of people like I used to do in my classes in the eighth grade and at the high school through all the levels. And I used to have other teachers bring their classes in occasionally to uh, crowd into the room and sit on the floor to listen to these stories because they're a lot of fun in some ways. And I like the ones that are have some basis in fact that are um, well, I won't say it. They are based on fact, but there's not always proof for things. Um, so today would be a great day for that because it's gray and a little breezy and misty here in St. Louis. And I think that it would be a great day for telling stories to a group. But alas, it's just me talking to you through a recorded video. And that's okay because it can still be fun. And this is what the story I'd like to tell. I've already spoken about, shared some of the stories from my mom's side of the family. And they didn't have a monopoly on strange things, on the weird supernatural type things. So I want to tell this story from my dad's side of the family. Uh, when my dad was born, his family lived on Henry Avenue in South St. Louis. Um, there were several members of the family that lived together along the same stretch of block. And that's the way it used to be in earlier days. And that meant that you could visit, you kept up with family, you were close, you had support. And so my grandmother would get together with her sister. Her sister would come over, my great aunt. She would come over and they would go up to an upstairs bedroom and they would make baby blankets. They would be making baby blankets because they were both expecting babies close to the same time. Now, my great aunt had her little boy was born about 3 months or so before my dad, and then my dad was born. And so one day, while they were going to be making clothes, baby clothes, my great aunt came over to the house there on Henry Avenue, and they went up to the upstairs bedroom and they were working away on this. Now, my dad, let me tell you this, my dad was the oldest of seven children, so there were no others yet. And the house seemed large then. It was a two-story house, which was kind of a big deal in those days. And so there was this upstairs bedroom that was just for being able, well, to become a nursery. And it was where the women used to do crafts and stuff. So my dad had been born. The other baby was 3 months old, and they were together in, they each had a little crib in there, bassinet type things. In fact, out in my garage right now, I have the bassinet that was my dad's that he was in, and as a baby. So here they were, my grandmother and her sister. They're working on the baby clothes. And all of a sudden, my grandmother looks up, and over my dad's crib, she sees an arm, a baby arm coming out of the wall, just hanging there over my dad's crib. And it was very distinct. It had a little yellow top, and it was there. And she screamed. And when she did, my her sister looked up and saw it, and the thing, poof, it was gone. Do I have a video of it? No. But they both saw it and they both claimed that, yes, that's what they saw. Here's the thing. Uh, they believed that it was an omen, that it was a sign. They didn't know what they were afraid. Of course, my grandmother was afraid since it was over my dad's crib, that it was an omen of his death. Well, a few months later, they were upstairs together again and they're working. And as my great aunt changes her baby and she's putting on this top, it was summertime now, she's putting this top on and he's got his arms up in the air, and as she pulls this top down, my grandmother gasped. It was the same color top, the same kind of little sleeveless thing. And it was his arm that she had seen there in the over my dad's crib. About 3 weeks later, my dad's little cousin had died of pneumonia, which was a common cause of death back then. And he was, they took that as an omen. They thought that it would be my dad, but it was his cousin. And is there anything to it? I don't know. Would it be creepy? Would I be thrilled to see an arm come out of the wall and say, "Oh boy, I saw something"? No, it would freak me out, probably. Of course, I'd probably try to speak to it and ask what was going on and what spirits were there, if any, what was happening. But sometimes there are these energies of life that are all around us that are there, sometimes that manifest when they normally can't be physically seen, but that conditions are right in some way for this to happen. And I can say that, and I have no proof. Of course, I could say that about gravity. There's no proof for gravity if you just are, if you're not a scientist, if you haven't studied it in school and science. And but is it there? Does it work without any explanation? Yeah, it does. And I'm not trying to say that this is something that is emphatically, unequivocally um, uh, fact, but I am saying that there was something there. And why do I say that? Well, there's more to the story. Um, actually, uh, my dad heard about the story, of course, as he was growing up. And being the oldest of seven, he always was doing something that was a little mischievous, I guess you could say. He knew about the story and how freaked out his mom was about it and how everybody always was kind of afraid of that room. So my dad actually, when he was old enough, drilled a hole from the closet that was behind the chairs where they would sit to do work, the rocking chair sitting there that my grandmother would sit in. He drilled a hole in the floor in that closet, to the closet that was downstairs, and he ran a string through and nobody could see because it was inside of closets. And the rocker was close, and he knew that he would tie the end of a little string of a thin string around that rocker bottom. And when he knew that his mother was going up there, that my grandmother was on her way up, he would pull it and it would slip off. The loop would slip off, but that rocking chair would be moving when she walked in. And of course, that added to the mystique of the room. But there was something that my dad couldn't explain. As he got a little older, he was probably about 11 or so, I think is what he told me, 11 or 12, when his grandfather, or his dad, my grandfather, um, worked at a trucking company. Uh, and they had a junkyard dog that everybody was afraid of there. And the only person that the dog would listen to was my dad. It was, or my grandfather. It was a German Shepherd, and it was evidently a very vicious dog. And because they didn't want it around, they felt it was too dangerous for most of the employees. Um, my grandfather brought the dog home because he liked the dog and the dog liked him. And my dad was very much like that. I never saw my dad afraid of a dog. Dogs would just come to him when he would ignore them, didn't want much to do with them, but they would always come to him. So this dog was a buddy to my dad. And when my grandparents would go out sometimes, since my dad was the oldest of seven, by this time he had younger sisters, especially sisters. The next two children were sisters, and my grandparents would go like next door or a couple houses down to uh, other people in the family, and my dad would be there with watching his little sisters, and they weren't that much younger than him, but he knew that they were deathly afraid of that German Shepherd that had to stay out in the backyard. They had a place fixed for it out there. And when my grandparents would go, my dad would kind of torment his sisters, and he would let that dog in the house. And they would scream and run, but they knew they would be okay because they would run upstairs And right at the top of the staircase, you would just keep going and go into the bedroom where the arm had come out of the wall, where it was this omen, this sign about um, my dad's cousin dying. And they could run up there, and that dog, that mean, vicious German Shepherd, would run up the first couple steps and then turn to go up the rest of the flight, hit that landing, and he would just stop and freeze. And his eyes would just be fixed on something at the top of that staircase. He was just there. And my dad said that all the bristles, the hairs would just stand up on the back of this dog's neck and down to his tail. And he would be growling, but he would not go up there. My grandfather tried to force him to go up a number of times, and either the dog was going to die or my grandfather was going to die. He couldn't make that dog go up there. Sometimes animals sense things. They don't always, I don't think, but maybe they do, and maybe it doesn't bother them. But this one, whatever this was, whatever energy was up there, this dog sensed it and would not go up those steps. Is that proof of anything? Yeah, it's proof that there was something there that the dog was afraid of, and I don't know what it was, and there was no logical explanation for it. But it seemed like that there was some energy there that was frightening to the dog, and that had made itself known about 10 years earlier when my dad was first born. So these things exist. We can sense if we want to tune in. I don't say we can sense and see arms coming out of walls for signs, but that there are life energies all around us. There are spirits about us that want to let us know things, that want to help us live our highest heart self. And we can tap into them. Maybe you can see things, maybe you can hear things, maybe you can just feel things, sense things. But at this time of the year, I always think of the Pocahontas song. What's that? Colors of the Wind, about every rock and tree and spirit, every rock and tree and something has a life, has a spirit, has a name. Um, and energies of life are in everything. And the essence of that spirit is love. The essence of you and me is love. We have heart. That heart is the spirit part of us, and that the very spirit part of us is love. So think about stories. Maybe you have some to say. That's what used to be fun about telling them with the classes, because a lot of times students would know about things from their families and they would say, oh, this happened. And they would tell the stories. And I always enjoyed hearing their stories too. But in the meantime, until next time, love and peace. I hope you enjoy this.